It's the early hours of the morning and the cruise ship Disney Wonder is ploughing through the Pacific off the west coast of Mexico. In the crew quarters, a surveillance camera captures 23-year-old Rebecca Corium talking on a phone. Seconds after ending the call, she walks off, never to be seen again.
We thought they must have it wrong or something. Something wasn't right. They just said that she was missing at sea.
Whatever happened to Rebecca on the Disney Wonder remains a mystery. Whether she slipped and fell, jumped or was pushed into the ocean wasn't properly investigated, and the truth may never be known. Rebecca's is just one of almost 200 cases of people who've vanished at sea in the past decade, leaving behind unanswered questions and grieving families.
Probably 50% of the disappearances have some factor of foul play.
Maritime lawyer Jim Walker has made a career out of exposing the cruise line's darkest secrets.
The place to get away with a crime is on a cruise ship. The place to be a sexual predator and prey on children is on a cruise ship. If you're a rapist, you're more likely to get away with it committing the crime on a cruise ship on the high seas. All of this is happening out in international waters typically. There are no policemen on the scene. You can't call 911 or you can't summons a police officer who will run onto the crime scene. So they're out there by themselves.
Known as the gateway to the Caribbean, the Bahamas capital, Nassau, is one of the busiest cruise ship ports in the world. Its harbour brims with luxury liners, testament to a booming international cruise industry that last year attracted 20 million passengers, turning over a record $30 billion US. But beyond these glittering facades lies a murky world, where criminals lurk and crime is rarely punished.
It's a cruise industry that knew over a decade ago they had a problem, and they tried to solve the problem through slick advertising and marketing rather than taking the hard steps they needed to really clean their act up.
I'm gonna take you on a ride, on a ride.
The glitzy ad campaigns portray a utopian world of wholesome family fun.
Royal Caribbean's floating nation where you are free to do anything you want.
But accountable to no one, and with their activities shrouded by centuries-old maritime laws, cruise lines have been concealing the truth about what's really happening on board their ships.
Even special you time.
That veil of secrecy was recently lifted when a US judge forced one of the industry's biggest operators to hand over its crime figures.
And once we had that database, we realized, my God, not only do you have crime, you have more crime in a comparable city ashore.
Across the Atlantic, the English city of Chester, with its Roman and medieval walls, seems an unlikely focal point for a campaign to clean up the cruise industry.
Yeah, this photograph's of Rebecca when we dropped her off from Manchester Airport, going off on her travels to meet with
that was the first time,
the ship.
wasn't it?
Yeah. That's really sad to look at now.
Until early last year, Mike and Anne Corium had little understanding of the vagaries of cruise ship crime. With their daughter Rebecca working her dream job, looking after children on a Disney cruise ship, they thought they had little cause for concern.
Well, we got the phone call about 11:15 here the Tuesday evening, just before we were going to bed, from Disney to say that Rebecca is missing at sea. And they've...
I don't think it gets any easier. I think the longer it goes on, the harder it seems to get.
Reported missing after failing to turn up for work, Rebecca was presumed lost at sea.
They didn't say that, you know, anyone had seen her go overboard, or they were just saying that she was missing. So we just wanted to get over there really as fast as we could.
As the Disney Wonder continued its voyage back to Los Angeles, the Coriums also travelled there to be on hand when it pulled into port. Expecting that the FBI would be tasked with investigating their daughter's disappearance, they were shocked to learn that there would be no US involvement.
We automatically assumed as well that the authorities would get on board the ship when it docked, but they didn't. It's not their jurisdiction. That's when we started thinking, what's something not right here? And then we started realising it comes under flags of convenience and where the ship is registered.
The Coriums went aboard, where they were shown the security camera footage of Rebecca on the morning she vanished.
Well, I asked the captain, I said, what do you think may have happened to Rebecca? And his words were that she'd, you know, obviously made this phone call, walked then onto the deck 5, probably tried to gather her thoughts and sat along the side, and a wave could have come and rocked the ship and taken her over.
And you went to that deck?
They took us to the deck.
And what did you make of the possibility of it being dangerous, that there could have been some sort of accidents?
We didn't think that was possible. I had to get underneath at least a 4-foot veil where there was a huge metal ledge, and I couldn't see over it. It was really quite high. I couldn't see how anyone could have gone over, or if they wanted to take their own life even would have gone over it from that particular part of the ship.
Although no one had actually seen Rebecca on Deck 5, the Coriums were pressured into accepting that it was from here that she left the ship.
They brought us flowers to lay there, which we couldn't understand. It was almost like a wake. Everything was laid out for us, really. The flowers were there, and, you know, we sort of were left there, really. We couldn't understand it, could we?
The Disney people want everyone to believe that a youth counselor can disappear. And they want you to believe, well, that was just a location of the ship that didn't have a closed-circuit television camera. It's preposterous.
With the FBI refusing to get involved, the investigation was left to a solitary detective from the Bahamas, where the ship is registered. He spent just a few hours on board, interviewing just a handful of crew members before flying home.
You had a potential crime scene, but you certainly had evidence that needed to be preserved. You needed a forensic workup of the ship, and you had this one policeman who was out there literally just for a few hours on the ship. And then, at the end of the day, the ship turns around and heads back out to sea with another few thousand family members. And imagine, they're bringing their children on this cruise ship, where one of the youth counselors who's responsible for taking care of the children disappeared without a trace.
This was in the LA Times. In June they did an article on Rebecca. That was us watching the ship sail out the Sunday after Rebecca disappeared.
How did you feel at that time?
Terrible really. I was thinking on that ship, the week before she'd have been on that ship.
Contacted by Dateline, a spokesperson for the Disney Cruise Line said that while Rebecca's disappearance was heartbreaking for everyone at the company, any questions on the issue should be directed to the Royal Bahamas Police Force.
This was actually on the trip, dancing with his cousin and his aunt and uncle. And that was kind of neat to see. And these are the kids that were on the cruise ship, but this was taken quite a few years ago.
6 months ago, Mary Lawson joined the growing ranks of families left searching for answers when her 20-year-old son, Blake, was reported missing on a family cruise to Alaska. At home alone in California, it was via the internet that Mary learned the worst.
20-year-old Blake Kepley, seen here in an old yearbook picture, was reported missing Friday as the ship stopped in Ketchikan.
I got on the internet. I read that, a Fallbrook boy went missing, Blake Kepley, age 20. That the Coast Guard had searched 24 hours, that they had called it off.
After a search covering 350 miles from the air and sea, the Coast Guard suspended the search just before 4 p.m. Saturday.
Blake had left the cabin at 1:30 a.m. and wasn't reported missing until 5.5 hours later. But when his family requested that the captain review the footage from the security cameras, they were told that wasn't possible. Do you believe them? Or do you think that, that some of this footage is conveniently never found?
I don't believe them, and I believe that they should have real-time video. I mean, how easy would that be to have an actual timer on your camera?
I got a list that showed about 24 cases.
The fact that cruise ship crime is an issue at all is largely due to this man, Ken Carver.
So anyway,
Along with Jamie Barnett, whose daughter was murdered on a cruise, he's on a mission to bring the cruise lines to account.
unfortunately, somebody going overboard makes the news. And every 2 weeks, according to reports, somebody's going overboard. But that's only the tip of the iceberg, Jamie.
Yeah. When Ken's 40-year-old daughter Marion vanished off a Celebrity Cruises voyage to Alaska in 2004, he was stonewalled at every turn as he searched for answers to her disappearance. Turning to private detectives, he managed to track down his daughter's onboard steward.
To our amazement, the steward said he'd reported Marion missing daily on that cruise, and they told him forget it, do his job. So it was 5 weeks before the FBI was ever called on our daughter's case, and by then, the FBI didn't do anything. They didn't call in anybody. They should have talked to the steward. We had to spend the money to get to that one person to realize that we were dealing with a cover-up.
Outraged at what he saw as the cruise line's callous disregard for his daughter, Ken took the matter to Washington.
Marion's story eventually became the subject of 5 congressional hearings. And ultimately out of that came legislation.
I particularly want to thank one of our witnesses this morning, Mr. Kendall Carver, who has been vigilant in his efforts to improve safety aboard cruise ships worldwide, and who has done so under very difficult personal circumstances. 4 years ago,
what resulted was America's Cruise Vessel and Safety Act, an important first step in bringing the cruise lines to heel after decades spent outside the reach of US laws.
I come to you both as a victim and as president of a group called International Cruise Victims, an organization for... We're not trained lobbyists, we're not trained anything, we are just parents looking for answers to what's happened to our children.
Despite the new laws, there's been little improvement. The FBI still seems reluctant to investigate cruise ship crime, and Jim Walker says the industry has done little to clean up its act.
You have cabin attendants now who are being hired from third world countries, no disrespect to the small Caribbean islands, that have no databases. You can't track them even if you wanted to. You don't know what you're getting. But you're hiring a 28-year-old man to be responsible for a 12-year-old girl's cabin, and mom and dad don't know what's happening, and they're at the casino, they're at the show, they're up at the nightclub, and the cabin attendant gets back into the cabin. That's still happening. Those cases are still happening.
While the cruise industry has followed some guidelines, such as installing peepholes in cabin doors, few ships have upgraded their video systems or installed man overboard alarm systems, and passengers continue to disappear.
I just can't believe that the international community are letting this go on, really. It is hard to understand why they let it go on.
I look at the water now and it's beautiful, but my son's out there somewhere. And, you know, he was on vacation. He was happy. This was something he was looking forward to. And he never came home.